That night at dinner, my parents looked me dead in the eye and said I had 48 hours to pack up and leave the house I'd sacrificed everything to save. They had no idea I was about to make them regret every single word. If you are watching this, kindly subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. And I hope that you're safe wherever you are. My name is Sarah Chen and I'm 28 years old, working as a graphic designer in Portland, Oregon. The mashed potatoes were still steaming when my father dropped the bomb. Fork halfway to my mouth, I froze as his words cut through the warm family atmosphere like a blade through silk. Sarah, you have 2 days to get your belongings out of this house. My mother's eyes darted away. My younger brother Jake sat silent, suddenly fascinated by his plate. The dining room I'd personally renovated last Christmas felt like it was closing in around me. This house belongs to Jake now, Dad continued, his voice steady and cold. We've made our decision. The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against the china. Jake, my 24-year-old brother who'd been living in Los Angeles, chasing his acting dreams while I'd been here, holding our family together with my bare hands. 3 years ago, when our parents faced foreclosure, Jake was nowhere to be found. I was the one who emptied my savings account. Every penny I'd scraped together from late-night freelance projects, every dollar meant for my own future, went straight to the bank. $45,000. Gone, just like that. But it didn't stop there. This house was falling apart when I saved it. Peeling paint, broken fixtures, a roof that leaked every winter storm. I spent weekends tearing up old carpet, painting walls, installing new lighting. The granite countertops in the kitchen, mine. The hardwood floors gleaming under our feet. I refinished them myself, spending hours on my hands and knees with sandpaper and stain. Every room told the story of my sacrifice. The living room furniture, carefully chosen and paid for with my Christmas bonus. The washing machine humming in the laundry room, purchased after the old one died, and Mom was hand-washing clothes in the bathtub. Even the chandelier hanging above us, casting warm light on this nightmare dinner, I'd researched for weeks to find one that fit our budget and style. While I was building our family home from the ground up, Jake was in LA waiting tables between auditions that never materialized. He'd call maybe twice a month, always asking for money, always promising he'd pay it back when he made it big. My parents ate it up. Every phone call from Jake was an event. Mom would cook his favorite meals when he visited once a year, if we were lucky. Dad would brag to the neighbors about his son in Hollywood, the actor, the dreamer. Meanwhile, I was invisible. The daughter who fixed their problems, who paid their bills, who turned their crumbling house into a home worth living in. I don't understand, I whispered, finding my voice. Why Jake? He hasn't even been here in 8 months. Dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Jake's ready to settle down, start a family. He needs stability. The irony burned like acid in my throat. Stability. The stability I'd provided for 3 years while Jake played pretend in California. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. We think it's time you found your own place, honey. You're successful now. You can afford it. Successful. Yes, I was successful. Successful at being taken for granted. Successful at being the family's personal ATM and construction crew rolled into one. But as I sat there, staring at the faces of the people who just discarded me like yesterday's newspaper, something shifted inside my chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even shock anymore. It was calculation. I pushed back from the table, chair legs scraping against the floor I'd installed. 2 days, I repeated slowly. You're giving me 2 days. Dad nodded, satisfied. That should be plenty of time. I smiled. Actually smiled. Because they had no idea what I was capable of when pushed too far. As I walked upstairs to my room, my mind was already racing. 2 days to leave. Fine. But I wouldn't be leaving empty-handed. And by the time Jake walked through that front door expecting to claim his prize, he was going to get the surprise of his lifetime. The next morning, I called my best friend Maya, a paralegal at a downtown law firm. She answered on the first ring, probably sensing the storm in my voice. They want to give the house to Jake, I said without preamble. After everything I've done, they're kicking me out for Golden Boy. Maya was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had that sharp analytical edge I'd heard her use when discussing cases. Sarah, something doesn't add up. If they're transferring property, especially after you've invested so much. There has to be paperwork, legal documentation. Have you seen anything? I hadn't. My parents handled all the boring stuff, as they called it. Bills, mortgages, legal documents. I just wrote the checks and did the work. I need you to find out what's really going on, Maya continued. Check with the county records office. See if there's been any recent activity on the property. And call Mark at First National. Didn't you work with him on some client projects? Mark Rodriguez. I designed the lobby for his bank branch last year. He owed me a favor after I'd pulled 3 all-nighters to meet his impossible deadline. Within an hour, I was sitting in Mark's office, my hands trembling slightly as he pulled up my parents' account information. Sarah, he said, his face growing pale as he scrolled through the records. You're not going to like this. My stomach dropped. What is it? There's a home equity loan on the property. Taken out 6 months ago. $50,000. 6 months ago, right around the time Jake came crawling back from LA, tail between his legs, talking about how expensive it was out there and how he needed to reassess his options. Who's on the loan? I asked, though I already knew the answer would destroy me. Mark's fingers clicked across his keyboard. His face went from pale to gray. Your parents are co-signers. But Sarah, he turned the monitor toward me. You're listed as the primary borrower. The room spun. My name, my social security number, my credit, all tied to a loan I'd never signed, never seen, never agreed to. That's impossible, I whispered. I never signed anything. Mark printed out the loan documents and slid them across his desk. There it was, clear as day, my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. The loops were wrong, the spacing off. Someone had forged my name. Can you imagine discovering that your own family had committed identity theft against you? How would you react if the people you'd sacrificed everything for had literally stolen your identity to benefit your brother? I stared at the papers, my vision blurring, not from tears but from pure rage. They hadn't just kicked me out of the house. They'd used me to pay for Jake's new life. My credit, my financial future, my legal liability, all leveraged to give my brother what he wanted. Sarah, Mark's voice seemed to come from far away. If this loan defaults, you're responsible for the full amount. Your credit will be destroyed. They could garnish your wages, seize your assets. I looked up at him, my voice steady despite the fury building inside me. I need copies of everything, every document, every signature, every piece of communication about this loan. He nodded, understanding the gravity of what we'd uncovered. I'll have it ready in an hour. Sarah, you need to protect yourself. This is fraud, identity theft. My own family had committed crimes against me, then had the audacity to sit across from me at dinner and act like they were doing me a favor. I walked out of that bank with a manila envelope full of evidence and a heart full of ice-cold determination. Maya was waiting in my car, having left work early when I'd called her with the news. Show me everything, she said. We spread the documents across my dashboard. The forged signature was obvious once you knew what to look for. My real signature had a distinctive curl on the chest, and a specific way I dotted my I's. This fake version was close, but not close enough to fool an expert. We have them, Maya said, her voice grim with satisfaction. This is textbook identity theft. Federal crime, state crime, civil liability. Sarah, we can destroy them with this. I stared at my childhood home through the windshield. The house I'd saved, improved, and loved. The house they were stealing from me using my own identity. Good, I said, because I'm about to show them exactly what happens when you underestimate Sarah Chen. Maya grinned, that predatory smile I'd seen her wear in mock trial competitions. What's the plan? I folded the loan documents carefully, sliding them back into the envelope. Evidence, ammunition, justice. First, we're going to make sure Jake's homecoming is memorable. Then we're going to teach my parents that some daughters bite back. But as we sat there planning my family's downfall, I had no idea that Jake was already on his way home, and the confrontation waiting for me would reveal just how deep their betrayal really went. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before in my 28 years. I went through my parents' private papers. The home office was Dad's domain. A cluttered room filled with filing cabinets and stacks of documents he'd always claimed were too complicated for me to understand. Funny how I was smart enough to save the house, but too stupid to handle paperwork. I started with the filing cabinet marked financial. My hands shook as I rifled through folders labeled insurance, taxes, property. And there, hidden between utility bills and warranty information, I found it. A folder marked home improvements. Inside were copies of the forged loan documents Mark had shown me, but also something else, something that made my blood run cold. Email printouts, conversations between my father and Jake, planning this theft. Dad, I need about 50 grand to get back on my feet. The house thing is perfect timing. Don't worry, son. Sarah will never know. She's too trusting. What if she finds out? She won't. And even if she does, what's she going to do? We're family. I sat back in Dad's desk chair, the emails scattered across his keyboard. They'd planned this, calculated it. Jake hadn't just come home defeated from LA. He'd come home with a scheme to steal my financial future and claim my hard work as his own. But the worst was yet to come. At the bottom of the folder, I found a handwritten note in Mom's delicate script. Practice signatures. Make sure this looks right. Sarah always makes hers too fancy. My mother, the woman who taught me to write my name in kindergarten, had been practicing forging it to commit fraud against me. I photographed every document with my phone, then carefully replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. They thought I was too naive to discover their betrayal. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My phone buzzed. Maya. I found something else, she said without greeting. I ran a credit check on you. This isn't the first time they've used your name. My heart stopped. What? 3 credit cards, opened over the past year, all in your name, all with your parents' address. Total debt, $18,000. $18,000, on top of the $50,000 house loan. They'd been systematically destroying my credit while I'd been working 60-hour weeks to build my design business. Maya, I whispered, they've stolen my entire financial identity. I know, but Sarah, this actually helps us. The more crimes we can prove, the stronger our case. We're not just talking about fraud anymore. This is organized, systematic identity theft. Federal charges. I walked through the house I'd rebuilt with my own hands, seeing it differently now. Every improvement I'd made, every dollar I'd spent, every weekend I'd sacrificed, it had all been part of their plan. Keep Sarah busy, keep Sarah invested, keep Sarah blind, while they robbed her blind. The living room furniture I'd chosen so carefully, bought with my credit cards, in my name, for their benefit. The kitchen renovation I'd managed last summer, financed with my identity, my future. They hadn't just taken my house, they'd stolen 3 years of my life. But as I stood there, surrounded by the physical evidence of their betrayal, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For 3 years I'd wondered why I felt so invisible in my own family. Why my sacrifices went unnoticed while Jake's empty promises were celebrated. Why I felt like I was giving and giving without ever receiving recognition or love in return. Now I knew. I wasn't their daughter, I was their victim, and victims, I was about to show them, could become prosecutors. I called Maya back. I want them destroyed, all of them. I want Jake to lose the house. I want my parents to face charges, and I want everyone in this town to know what they did. Sarah, Maya's voice was careful, professional. Are you sure this is your family? Once we start this process, there's no going back. I looked around the living room one more time. The furniture I'd bought, the walls I'd painted, the life I'd built for people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. They stopped being my family the moment they forged my signature, I said. Now they're just criminals who happened to raise me. Okay then, Maya said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Let's burn their world down. But first I had to survive Jake's homecoming. Because according to the emails I'd found, he was arriving tonight, expecting to walk into his new house and his new life, built on the ashes of mine. Little did he know, I'd be waiting for him with 3 years' worth of rage and a folder full of evidence that would change everything. Jake's Uber pulled up at 7 p.m. sharp, just as I'd expected from the emails. I watched from the living room window as he climbed out, dragging 2 expensive-looking suitcases. Even from a distance, I could see the confidence in his stride. He thought he was coming home to claim his kingdom. I was sitting on the couch when he walked through the front door, using his old key like he owned the place, which, according to our parents, he now did. Sarah? His voice carried that fake surprise I'd grown to hate over the years. I thought Dad said you'd be moving out today. I didn't get up, didn't even look at him directly. Tomorrow's the deadline. I still have 12 hours. Jake set down his suitcases and looked around the living room, his eyes cataloging every piece of furniture, every improvement, every dollar I'd invested in this place. It looks great in here, really great. You did good work. The casual way he said it, like he was complimenting a contractor rather than acknowledging years of sacrifice, made my teeth clench. Thanks, I said evenly. I put my heart into it. Every piece of furniture, every paint job, every renovation, my money, my time, my effort. He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Look, Sarah, I know this is weird timing, but Mom and Dad thought it would be better if I took over the mortgage. I'm ready to settle down, maybe start a family. You're successful now. You don't need to be tied down to this place. I finally turned to face him. What mortgage, Jake? His eyes flickered. Just for a second, but I caught it. The house mortgage, obviously. Interesting, because according to the bank records I pulled today, the original mortgage was paid off 3 years ago when I saved this house from foreclosure. The current loan is a home equity line of credit for $50,000. Jake's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken of his email conversations with Dad. Really? Because these emails suggest you know exactly what you're talking about. Quote, Dad, I need about 50 grand to get back on my feet. The house thing is perfect timing. He lunged for my phone, but I was ready. I stepped back, holding it out of reach. You want to see more? I scrolled to the next image. Here's Dad's response. Don't worry, son. Sarah will never know. She's too trusting. The color drained completely from Jake's face. For the first time in our lives, I had the upper hand, and he knew it. Sarah, let me explain. Explain what? How you and our parents committed identity theft against me. How you forged my signature on a $50,000 loan. How you've been systematically destroying my credit for a year, while I was working my ass off to support this family. Wait, can you believe this? Your own brother tries to steal your life's work, then acts like you're the one being unreasonable when you catch him. How far would you go to protect yourself from your own family? Jake sat down heavily in the armchair I'd bought last Christmas. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. We thought you'd never find out. And what happens when the loan defaults? When the bank comes after the primary borrower? That's me, Jake. My credit gets destroyed, my wages get garnished, my financial future gets ruined so you can play house in the place I built. He looked up at me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been remorse. But then his expression hardened, reverting to the entitled older brother I'd grown up with. You always were dramatic, he said. It's just money, Sarah. You'll make more. Just money. 3 years of my life. $45,000 out of my savings. Countless weekends spent renovating instead of building my own life. It was just money to him. You're right, I said, walking toward the stairs. It is just money, which is why you won't mind paying it all back. What are you talking about? I paused on the bottom step. I'm talking about the lawsuit I'm filing tomorrow morning. Identity theft, fraud, conspiracy, federal charges, Jake. Prison time. His laugh was sharp and bitter. You can't sue family. Mom and Dad will never forgive you. Mom and Dad. I turned back to face him. You mean the people who practiced forging my signature so they could steal my identity more convincingly? Those people. Jake's mouth fell open. He hadn't known about Mom's handwriting practice sessions. Oh yes, I continued. I found that too. Along with the credit cards you all opened in my name. $18,000 worth of debt I knew nothing about. Systematic, organized identity theft. I climbed 2 steps, then looked back down at him. You want this house, Jake? Fight me for it. But you're going to do it in court, in front of a judge, with the whole world watching. Sarah, wait. His voice cracked with the first real emotion I'd heard from him. We can work this out. Family. I smiled, and I knew it wasn't a kind expression. We stopped being family when you decided I was worth more as a victim than as a sister. As I walked upstairs to pack the few personal items I actually cared about, I could hear Jake on his phone, probably calling our parents in a panic. Let them scramble. Let them try to figure out how to explain their crimes to a judge. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, I was going to sleep peacefully, knowing that I'd finally found my voice, my strength, and my way out of being their victim. Maya met me at the courthouse at 8 a.m. sharp, carrying a briefcase that looked like it could hold evidence to topple governments. Her law firm had agreed to take my case pro bono once they saw the evidence. Nothing made lawyers happier than an airtight fraud case with clear documentation. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. As we climbed the courthouse steps, I thought about Jake's panicked phone calls last night, the shouting match I'd heard between him and our parents through the thin walls. They'd realized their carefully laid plans were crumbling, and they were turning on each other. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The filing process was surprisingly simple. Fill out forms, attach evidence, pay fees. Within 2 hours, Sarah Chen versus Robert Chen, Margaret Chen, and Jacob Chen was officially entered into the court system. Identity theft, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, civil damages for emotional distress and financial harm. Maya had been thorough. We weren't just seeking to void the fraudulent loans. We were asking for punitive damages, attorney fees, and a restraining order preventing them from using my identity for any purpose. The beauty of this case, Maya explained as we left the courthouse, is that it's not he said, she said. We have documents, bank records,
email evidence,
your mother's handwriting practice. They can't claim this was a misunderstanding. My phone started buzzing immediately after the papers were served. Mom first, her voice shaking. "Sarah, honey, we can talk about this. Family doesn't sue family." Then Dad, angry and defensive. "You're being ridiculous. This is a misunderstanding. Drop the lawsuit and we'll figure something out." Finally Jake, desperate. "Sarah, please, I'll pay everything back. Just don't do this to Mom and Dad." I blocked all their numbers. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of depositions, document requests, and meetings with Maya's legal team. The evidence was so overwhelming that Jake's lawyer advised him to settle immediately. But I wasn't interested in settling. They need to face consequences, I told Maya during one of our strategy sessions. If I settle, they walk away with a slap on the wrist, and probably do this to someone else. The first real victory came when the court issued a temporary restraining order freezing all access to the fraudulent accounts and credit cards. Suddenly Jake couldn't use my credit to finance his new life, and my parents couldn't continue their spending spree. But the sweetest moment was when the local newspaper picked up the story. Local family accused of systematic identity theft against daughter ran on the front page of the community section. The article detailed the charges, the evidence, and the scope of the fraud. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with messages from neighbors, former classmates, and clients expressing their shock and support. Diane from across the street called to tell me she'd suspected something was wrong when she saw Jake moving in after I'd done all the work on the house. "Everyone in the neighborhood knows you saved that place," she said. "What they did to you is criminal." Criminal. Yes, it was. And now everyone knew it. The trial was set for 6 weeks later. Maya was confident we'd win, but she warned me that my family would likely try to manipulate me into dropping the charges. She was right. Mom showed up at my new apartment, tears streaming down her face. "Sarah, please, your father might go to jail. Is that what you want? To destroy your own parents?" "I want justice," I replied, not inviting her in. "You destroyed yourselves when you decided to commit crimes against me." Dad tried a different approach, showing up at my office with Jake in tow. They cornered me in the parking garage, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of fear. "Drop the lawsuit," Dad demanded, "or you'll regret it." That was his mistake, threatening me in front of witnesses. My coworker Marcus was walking to his car and heard every word. Maya added witness intimidation to our list of charges, but the most pathetic attempt came from Jake himself, who somehow got past security at my apartment building and was waiting by my door when I came home from work. "Sarah," he said, "I'm sorry, I really am, but if you go through with this, you'll have no family left. Is that worth it?" I looked at my brother, this person who'd shared a childhood with me, who I'd once looked up to and protected. Now he was just another criminal trying to escape consequences for his actions. If someone stole your identity, destroyed your credit, and tried to take everything you'd worked for, would you forgive them just because you shared DNA? Where do you draw the line between family loyalty and self-respect? "Jake," I said quietly, "I stopped having a family the moment you decided I was more valuable as a victim than as a sister." The trial lasted 3 days. 3 days of watching my family sit across a courtroom from me, flanked by lawyers they'd borrowed money to hire. 3 days of testimony, evidence presentation, and cross-examinations. Maya was brilliant. She presented our case like a master storyteller, walking the jury through 3 years of systematic fraud and abuse. The forged signatures, projected on a screen for everyone to see. The email evidence, read aloud in Jake's own words. My mother's handwriting practice, displayed like evidence at a crime scene. My parents' lawyer tried to paint me as a vindictive daughter tearing apart her family over money, but Maya demolished that narrative during her cross-examination of my father. Mr. Chen, she said, how much money did your daughter invest in saving your home from foreclosure? I don't remember exactly, $45,000. Do you remember that now? Yes, and how much did she spend over 3 years renovating and maintaining the property? I don't know. Maya pulled out receipts, bank statements, credit card bills, $22,000 in documented expenses, nearly $70,000 total investment in your family home. Is that correct? Dad shifted in his seat. Possibly. And in return for this $67,000 investment and 3 years of labor, you decided to forge her signature and steal her identity to benefit her brother. Is that your definition of family values? The jury was riveted. I could see it in their faces, the disgust and disbelief. Jake's testimony was even worse. Under oath, he had to admit that he'd never contributed a penny to the house's maintenance or mortgage, that he'd been unemployed for 8 months before coming home, that he'd explicitly asked our parents to use my identity because his credit was destroyed. Did you ever consider asking your sister directly for help? Maya asked. No. Why not? Jake looked at our parents' table, then back at Maya, because she would have said no. So instead of accepting that she had the right to say no to your request, you decided to steal her identity and force her to pay anyway? It wasn't like that. What was it like, Mr. Chen? The most damaging testimony came from my mother. Under oath, she had to admit to practicing my signature. When Maya asked why, Mom's answer sealed their fate. I wanted to make sure it looked right so Sarah wouldn't notice. Even their own lawyer winced. But the moment that broke me came during my own testimony. Maya asked me to describe what it felt like to discover my family had been systematically stealing my identity. I looked across the courtroom at my parents, at Jake, at these people who'd raised me and claimed to love me while robbing me blind. It felt like discovering that the people I trusted most in the world saw me not as a daughter or sister, but as a resource to exploit. That every hug, every family dinner, every I love you, was just part of a long-term plan to use me up and throw me away when my brother needed something. My voice cracked, but I continued. They didn't just steal my money or my credit. They stole my ability to trust, to believe in family, to feel safe in my own home. They turned 3 years of love and sacrifice into evidence of how naive and worthless they thought I was. Several jury members were wiping their eyes. The verdict came back in less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge was thorough in his ruling. The fraudulent loans were voided entirely, my name cleared from all obligations. My parents and Jake were ordered to pay restitution for the money stolen, plus punitive damages for the emotional distress caused. But the judge saved his harshest words for the end. This court has rarely seen such a calculated and systematic betrayal of trust, he said, looking directly at my family. The defendants didn't just commit financial crimes against the victim, they weaponized her love and loyalty against her for their own benefit. This behavior is not just criminal, it's morally reprehensible. My parents received 18 months of probation and community service. Jake, as the primary beneficiary of the fraud, received 6 months in county jail, but the real victory wasn't the legal judgment. It was walking out of that courtroom knowing I'd stood up for myself, fought back, and won. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within a month, my parents had lost the house to foreclosure. The bank, no longer bound by the fraudulent loan agreement, called in the full balance of the legitimate debts they couldn't pay. Jake served his 6 months, and when he got out, he moved in with our parents in a cramped one-bedroom apartment across town. His dreams of starting fresh in our childhood home had died in that courtroom, along with his credit rating and job prospects. The community reaction was everything I'd hoped for, and more. The local paper followed up with an article about the verdict, and suddenly everyone knew what they'd done. Former family friends crossed the street to avoid my parents. Jake couldn't get hired anywhere in town once employers Googled his name, but I thrived. With my credit cleared and my name protected by court order, I was finally free to build the life I'd always wanted. I moved into a beautiful downtown apartment, started my own design firm, and for the first time in years, every dollar I earned stayed mine. The furniture from our family home, legally mine according to all the receipts I'd saved, filled my new space perfectly. That gray couch looked even better in my living room than it ever had in theirs. The dining table where they delivered their ultimatum now hosted dinner parties with friends who actually appreciated me. Maya often asked if I regretted going through with the lawsuit, especially when she heard about my parents' financial struggles or Jake's continued unemployment. I never hesitated with my answer. I regret trusting them for so long, I'd say, but I'll never regret standing up for myself. The hardest part wasn't the legal battle or the family estrangement, it was learning to recognize my own worth, to understand that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. For 3 years, I'd confused love with exploitation, family loyalty with being a doormat. Now I knew the difference. Some people said I went too far, that family should forgive family no matter what, but those people had never had their identity stolen by their own parents. They'd never been systematically defrauded while being told it was for their own good. Today, 2 years later, I run a successful design firm with 12 employees and a waiting list of clients. I own my apartment outright and have a savings account that nobody can touch but me. Most importantly, I'm surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. My parents occasionally try to reach out through intermediaries, claiming they want to reconcile. Jake sent a letter from prison apologizing and asking for another chance. I read their messages, then delete them. Because the truth is, some betrayals are too deep to forgive, some damage is too systematic to forget. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is accept that biology doesn't guarantee loyalty, and love shouldn't require martyrdom. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't cruel, it's necessary, that protecting your future isn't selfish, it's smart, and that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones most willing to destroy you for their own benefit. My family thought they could use me up and throw me away. Instead, they gave me the greatest gift possible. They showed me exactly who they were, and exactly how strong I could be when I stopped letting them define my worth. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of standing up, fighting back, and finding your strength. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they deserve better than being taken for granted. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting free.